Greetings, everyone. I am so happy to have Tara Singer as my guest today on the Drew Aversa Show. We are going to be talking about her leadership with the National Leadership Honor Society, Omicron Delta Kappa, one that I was actually inducted to. Tara, great to have you with me today.
Thank you so much, Drew. It's my pleasure to be here.
So tell me a little bit about the circle, they call it. It was really interesting. When I was a student at Southern Oregon University, I received basically an email saying, hey, you're inducted in this National Leadership Honor Society. And I said, what the heck? This is awesome. How did this happen? Who nominated me? I still don't know. So thank you if you're listening to whoever nominated me. And it's really an interesting group of people, some amazing leaders all the way from Congress to CEOs to just very notable people in the National Leadership Honor Society. So if you want to kind of share a little bit about that and your leadership background, that'd be great.
Sure. Well, Omicron Delta Kappa was founded in 1914 on the campus of Washington and Lee University. And the organization was founded with the intention to bring together students from a wide variety of campus activities to join with one another to collaborate on, as we say in our initiation ceremony, worthy undertakings. It was thought that maybe as a collective they could accomplish more good if they brought their followers together at several institutions that led to the establishment in the early 1930s of the first student unions on campus, and notably at the University of Kentucky and Georgia Tech. And so over the course of time, the organization has grown from having its first circle at W&L, and then it went to Johns Hopkins in 1916. Today we have 317 circles around the country. We call them circles rather than chapters, which actually comes from a Presbyterian church tradition. And we have a variety of different programs that are offered through our circles on campus, as well as national programs.
That's awesome. And what was the background as far as the circle and the leadership society? Who got together? How did this really lift off?
There was a group of 15 young men at Washington and Lee University, which at the time was an all-male institution. It was a group of students, faculty, staff, and administrators who joined together with the purpose of creating this intentionally intergenerational and multi-discipline and multi-phases of collegiate life representative organization. And with the intention of just really developing leadership on campus. How you might see that play out in this day and time is I sometimes say, sort of jokingly, that we're the organization that brings together the quarterback and the drum major, so they find out that they have so much in common. They both do what they do in front of thousands of people in all sorts of weather, to people going in different directions, usually on Saturday, unless ESPN tells them otherwise. We're also the group that brings together the student newspaper editor and the SGA president, so hopefully they'll learn that they maybe have some more things in common than they don't. And then my fervent hope is that if we can bring together the young Democrats and the college Republicans, and so they could work together as students, maybe they'll be able to work together by the time they get to Congress.
I think that is a big endeavor and one that is definitely needed. We are so divided in this nation, and what you just shared is really the truth of life and humanity, that we are so connected and interconnected just through some basic core principles. And one of the things to be inducted into the National Leadership Honor Society, there are about 4 or 5 criteria. So can you share that with the listeners of like, how do you get into this? And then I think once we can see how you get into the Leadership Society, if you're a Democrat or a Republican, there are these kind of guiding reasons why we become in leadership roles. So I think this will be a good area for us to expand upon.
We have national membership requirements, which are that you have to be a junior or senior. So we're a senior honor society, along with organizations such as Phi Beta Kappa, Phi Kappa Phi, and Sigma Psi. But we also induct graduate and professional students, as well as faculty, staff, alumni, and community leaders. And you have to be a leader in what we call one of the 5 phases or the 5 pillars of collegiate life. And generally speaking, these do run the sort of the gamut of what you might find as opportunities for student involvement on any college campus. We recognize leaders in scholarship, which might be people who are involved in undergraduate research or academic honor societies. We have people involved in athletics, so that would be intramural as well as intercollegiate. The field of service, which includes student government, fraternity and sorority life, religious activities, and nearly every other student organization you can imagine. We invite people from speech, journalism, and communication, the mass media. And then we also invite students who excel in the creative and performing arts. So you have to be a leader in at least one of those. Most often you see students who are a leader in 2 or more of those areas. And these are the involved students on campus. And we're not intended to be an exclusive organization. We're intended to be a prestigious organization, but our key word is collaboration. And we very much want our circles to bring together different students to work together and address matters of campus and community concern.
So you have been an educator for a lot of your career. And
Correct.
what is your thought as far as leadership? This is always a hot topic thing. Are leaders born, or can people develop leadership? What are your thoughts on that?
I honestly think that people can develop their leadership. I do think there's some individuals who have some innate characteristics that are perceived as being leadership, but that might just be gregariousness. But to be a solid leader, I think that you don't necessarily require training, but it's an advantageous thing to have some and to have the experience of trying on different types of leadership roles. Sometimes you're a positional leader in an organization, which means you have the title of vice president, committee chair, president of an organization. And sometimes you're that individual who leads from within by modeling behavior that is positive for the overall organization. Sometimes you're a leader by asking relevant questions rather than driving a conversation by telling. And one of the things that I like about the work of our circles is that they provide opportunities for our students to put together service projects on campus, serve as an advisory board to a college or university administration, coordinate a leadership development program for emerging leaders, namely first and second year students. And through those experiences, they have to collaborate with one another. They learn a little bit about budgeting. They learn about roles and responsibilities. Certainly, they learn about empathy and listening and decision-making and, to an extent, critical analytical skills. And all those things, I think, really help round out one's leadership ability.
No, that's great, Tara. And as far as the structure of ODK, it is a membership organization, correct?
Omicron Delta Kappa is a membership organization which is governed by a board of trustees that includes 18 at-large trustees, several appointed officers, 3 currently enrolled students, faculty, staff, advisors, and a couple of other individuals that are appointed to the board. But membership is really most often experienced during your collegiate years on campus. But after you graduate, there are no lifetime dues, but you are a member for life once you are initiated.
So how are you engaging alumni? And I know there was a big campaign. I was sent emails on the new directory and whatnot. I've also been involved in leadership roles myself, serving in not-for-profit membership associations. And engagement is key to sustaining the mission, sustaining the brand awareness. So what are some of the things that you're working on now as the leader of ODK? And what are some nuggets that you want to share with other executives within the membership or brand engagement space, really? So what are you doing right now in ODK? What's going on?
Well, there certainly is a lifetime of experience within Omicron Delta Kappa. And It's most intense, as it is with other student serving organizations during the collegiate years. And there are lots of opportunities for involvement during that time. We have a scholarship program. We have opportunities for our members to participate in post-baccalaureate internships, actually some during the collegiate career. There are some discounts for access to programs and admission fees, such as the Choral Fellows program. And so those are the things that are available as member benefits when you're a currently enrolled student. One of the changes, though, that we've made in recent years, actually we'll really begin with it in 2020, is that we had historically a biennial convention, which was a governance convention. And we have transitioned that program to being an annual national conference. We will have the first annual national conference in Lexington, Kentucky next summer. And while that program is still primarily collegiate serving, there will be some opportunities and some tracks for individuals who are out in the world of work. And we hope to expand by the time of 2020 to, in conjunction with the annual National Leadership Conference, to run primarily the collegiate serving version of that, which includes a lot of information about how to run a good circle and how to recruit members and the like, but also to see if we can have some of our higher profile speakers actually give 2 addresses, or maybe doing an overlap of a programming time, so that on Saturday, the collegiate members, as well as the individuals who are in the world of work, have the opportunity to just sit in the room together and hear a distinguished speaker, such as Eric Motley, who spoke at our last national convention, who is the executive vice president of the Aspen Institute and the author of a wonderful book, Madison Park, A Place of Hope. Excuse me. But if you don't come to a conference or a convention, we have a number of volunteer opportunities for people to be involved. We always are looking for people to review scholarships. We're looking for people to actually present programs as part of the National Leadership Conference. You can stay engaged by reading our magazine, The Circle, which is an award-winning publication that comes out 3 times a year. And you can also be involved in things such as our LinkedIn group. And if you happen to be an employer, we have an online jobs board that you can, if you're searching for a job, you can check out information, but you can also post within that if you'd like to recruit from the Omicron Delta Kappa population.
That's great. And then we were talking earlier about division. So now I want to shift us into conversation on leadership. What are some ways that we can work through differences? How would you advise people? I just feel like today with social media, there's just so much, especially for younger students that are 18, 19, 20, their whole worldview is centered a lot on external locus of control instead of internal locus. And what I mean by that is internal, I'm responsible for myself. External, the world, is responsible for my actions and whatnot. So we see, with Yelp, Facebook, everything is all externally reviewed. So my behavior, my friends, my likes, my validation, my status. I think this is a huge leadership issue that needs to be addressed, in academia as well as in corporate America, in the corporations, because the truth, I feel, is leadership it's an inside job that the benefits are rewarded externally. If we're whole internally, we can do extremely well. But I see so much division with people on different media channels, and even our national leader himself taking charge of Twitter. That's a whole nother conversation on another day. But how do we work together as leaders? What are some tips, tools, things that you've seen and that you do as a leader in life to end the division and to really get to the shared purpose?
Well, that's a good lead into a long philosophical conversation. What is it? There are 2 outstanding researchers, one of which is a member of ODK, one of whom, Corey C. Miller from Wright State University, has developed a whole series of works on the Generation Z, this generation of college students, those born after 1995. And she also has done some research in terms of student leadership competencies. How do you go from being a leader and then going into a career or further graduate study, and what are the skill development that you need to do there? And then Tim Elmore, who runs an organization called Growing Leaders, has just released his own book about Generation Z. And the point that he makes, which goes back to the one that you just made, is that this is a very anxious group of students because, as you indicated, their sense of self-worth is provided by devices in their hands or in their laps more often than it perhaps should be. And it's a real challenge. It's the fear of missing out and all those other things. And so my advice to young people is that spend time with other human beings in person. You may have 500 Facebook friends, you may have 500 LinkedIn contacts, but where is that group of individuals that you actually spend time sitting across from one another and continuing to develop your conversation skills? I cannot say enough about the importance of civility. And one of the things that I think has gotten lost in our society is the understanding that to be civil does not mean that you have to agree with a person who is sharing an opinion that you absolutely cannot stand. But you may need to listen to what they're saying with your heart, with your ears, with an open mind, so that you develop an appreciation for their perspective. You may not be convinced that their perspective is right, but you may have a greater understanding of where they are coming from. There is another group of people who just have a podcast that's running right now that says, I think you're wrong, but I'm listening. And developing listening skills is probably one of the most important things that one can do through small group interactions. So get out, spend time with other students. Don't necessarily have all of your self-worth generated from the likes of what you put on Facebook. And you need to have that, I think, to be a healthy human being. I would say the other thing, quite honestly, is that live the golden rule. One may not be religious, but I do believe in the Church of Goodology, and that treat others the way you wish to be treated. And while it's Pollyannish perhaps to say that, I think a lot of people who show empathy and compassion for others and do try to think about their perspectives make much better leaders. You can't, my personal opinion is, you cannot be an effective leader if you don't have empathy as well as if you don't have vision. And so take a while to develop one's leadership perspective and vision. I think that that's an ongoing process for most of us. I don't think most of us graduate from college and know exactly where our career and our life is going to take us. But I think that having some guiding principles of decency, empathy, compassion, honesty, scholarship, integrity, character, and fellowship, these are all in service. These are all ODK's values, by the way. I think serves an individual and their family and their career and the people that they serve and the people that they work with well.
I really enjoy that as far as what you said. I may not agree with you, but it doesn't mean I have to be disrespectful, right? And I think that's where our society, we see so much disrespect towards other human beings instead of just going, yeah, I don't agree with your perspective and I choose different. And it's okay for me to choose different because I have my own journey. I have my own belief systems. And you also talked about religion. You know, we all grow up with a different faith, a different ideology. And that's one thing I've learned through traveling is, you know, we get 60 to 70 years on average in this body, in this lifetime. So to think that we know it all when, you know, there's from a leadership perspective, right? Billions of people in India follow Hinduism. Then we go to the Middle East with Islam. And then we come to America, you know, with Christianity, Catholicism. So to think that we are 100% right. Is one thing that I've learned as a leader is to really, tell me more. Tell me more about that. How do you believe what you believe? Why do you believe what you believe? And I think those are ways that we can just have a better community, whether it's on a local level or a political level, on a national level, to really start coming together and to get out of, like you say, put the devices down and to have that human connection where leadership's not about sending an emoji. It's about depth. It's about, as you mentioned at the start of our conversation on this point, about philosophy. And what is your philosophy as a leader, right? We have to
Correct.
start having these sort of things. So one thing too that I find interesting that you'll probably have some perspective as an educator. So what we're talking about is really human connection. Now, one of the challenges is with technology. So even in academia, a lot of classes are being offered online. We're seeing the demand for online learning. We're seeing the competition, challenging traditional academia, right? You have people like Grant Cardone starting the 10X University, different things where real world experience. If you want to make money, this is how you can do it. You don't necessarily have to go to business school and spend money and have student loan debt. So there are a lot of competing forces now in academia where we have to evolve the model. And one of the benefits of on-campus education is human connection. So how do
Correct.
you see the challenges of leadership development in our youth with technology when they can just be on a screen? They don't really have to see things. And one thing that when I speak to organizations in my keynotes, I talk about the importance of nonverbal communication, that 80% of our communication is actually looking at other people. To be a good sales executive, you have to be able to read body language in a second. You have to be able to shift. You have to be able to understand what's going on in that person's the mindset, right? And so much of that is nonverbal that can be learned through face to face. But when we have the screen between us, what's next, I guess, in academia? What are the trends you're seeing to really foster leadership development in a digital era? Because
Mhm.
we've seen that depression's rising. We've seen all these negative trends, the divisiveness of things. So I'm not sure that technology is the solution as it claims to be, but what what are your thoughts on this? Where's the balance?
Well, my younger sister teaches exclusively online, and she teaches some hot button topics. She teaches gender studies, and um, and as the teacher, she says it's still classroom management. It is still setting the tone for civil discussions, and she spends her very first class every semester basically explaining the ground rules of how, if you have a disagreement with somebody, how you respectfully share your difference of opinion. And I hope many faculty do that. In fact, I think many of them do. But technology also, you may be interacting with a screen, but these days, thanks to things such as Zoom, you can actually see the person on the other side of the room on the other side of the world with their screen open and engaging in a group discussion. And so if it is strictly learning content and there's no need for discussion, and you might be, let's say, I don't know, accounting principles, I guess that's one thing. But think classes such as the humanities and history and social sciences, where they really do require some thought and discussion in order to learn about those fields. There are ways of doing that, and there are ways of setting some guidelines that I think people can follow in order to get information out of the class, but also to share different opinions and different thoughts. There's one of our members, a gentleman named Dr. Bruce Jackson, has created what he calls the Charlie Life and Leadership Academy. And the Charlie Life and Leadership Academy is fascinating in that it has a whole series of modules which individuals can go take and it has discussion questions. It has videos that one can review. And so if you want to become a better decision maker, you can go take one of those leadership development modules from Charlie Life and Leadership Academy. So we just call it Charlie. And if you are an individual who is good at self-exploration, that's a really good tool that is available for one. Again, the Student Leadership Competencies Inventory is another way of people to find out where they are maybe lacking in terms of development of certain aspects of leadership. And what I think is nice is that very much the leadership competencies developed by Corey C. Miller map nicely to the modules that have been created by Bruce Jackson. So I encourage people to take a look at both of those if they would like to have that opportunity to do some self-reflection so that they may better understand where they're going as a leader.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's definitely a lot of online resources out there, from the people that you mentioned, Tony Robbins, to, Grant Cardone, to, Dean Garazi, with real estate. Whatever you want to learn in whatever industry, there's the online approach. I think the key too is just working people through, not through a chat bot, because people react differently. We can't, artificial intelligence it's amazing, really. I mean, when you see the things and the predictability and the precision on a lot of these things, but behind that is human emotion. And I think that's the one thing that is just different with the technology platforms that are out there. They're great, but then with human emotion, that can drive things like war all the way. It just, emotion is such a powerful thing. And I think as leaders, we have to figure out, how do we use technology in a mindful and a meaningful way, but still understand that behind that is a human, and we have to connect other humans to other humans, and really understand the emotion of leadership. I think emotion as a leader can be harnessed for good, and it can be harnessed for greed and very destructive things. So
correct. One piece of advice that I meant to mention earlier is, and there are things that your mother told you that you never thought you would speak, but here's one of those that my mother told me.
Is she going to listen to this?
She will.
Okay. All right.
Consider the source. Very often, information is shared with you because somebody else has an agenda. And one should always evaluate why that information is being shared with you. What is that individual's agenda? And is their agenda your agenda? Also, in the category of things mothers say to their children is that if it's in print, does not necessarily mean it's true. So that was in the era of print newspapers. If it's online, it must be true. I think that's probably not true either. So, it's just because it's on Wikipedia, on Google, on Facebook, does not mean that it's accurate. And you are a smart human being, and you have the capacity to develop your own understandings of circumstances and situations. And one of the speeches that I often give for ODK is that there are different leadership lessons from each of those 5 phases that we celebrate. And as a leader, we talk about scholarship. So as a leader, you need to research before you make a decision. And as a leader, we talk about athletics. You may need to train to be a better leader. And we talk about service. And leadership is about service. It's not about your individual glory. And we discuss communications. Well, your ability to communicate openly, honestly, and effectively, and set a proper tone for how discourse takes place in your organization is incredibly important. And then we also celebrate the arts and leadership in that area. And so, are you leaving the world in a better place than you found it? Are you creating organizational art, individual art, family art? Are you making the world a better place by your leadership? And those things are all things that I wish all sorts of leaders and citizens would consider.
Great points. And one thing you mentioned on there that I would love to touch on too, just for the audience, is, Servant leadership is such a hot topic thing right now. Servant leadership, what does that look like, right? Because one of the things that I've seen people try to say that they're being a servant leader is, oh, what do you need from me, right? And then at the top, they're not doing what they need to do for the team, but they're using the rhetoric of servant leadership. So one thing that I just want to share, my perspective of servant leadership is really helping your people thrive. And that includes if they have challenges with mental health, making sure that you do more to get them the right resources that they need by working with HR teams. If they have maternity things, making sure that you really value the time of parental and maternal, the time off to bond with their children, and understanding the long haul and the longevity of decisions like that as a leader. Whether it's in sales, making sure that your people have the right data, like you're talking about, the right research to support their decisions, the right marketing collateral to go with it, and the challenge and the bravery of saying, hey, our stuff's a little outdated. It's time for a refresh. Let's refresh organization. Servant leadership is not just being passive and saying, what do you need from me? It's actually doing it, going there, rolling up your sleeves as a leader, being in the trenches with the troops, so to speak, and being right by their side and helping them get to that final victory. And I would say I learned that in the fire department. I always tell people I've cleaned a lot of toilets in the fire service, and I've had a lot of fun, going to fires and doing a lot of community events and things like that. But if you have to roll up your sleeves. You have to be willing to get at that ground level as a servant leader and to really help your people thrive, and then to know the strategy and to know the higher level things up top and to be able to make it happen. So one thing I just want to touch on that is servant leadership, because there's a lot of talk about that. A lot of people are curious about that now, but it doesn't mean that you just get to sit back and, what do you need from me? You've really got to be in there with your people, mentoring them, leading them, and helping them thrive.
Absolutely. And there was a book written years ago entitled In Search of Excellence, and it talked about the president of the company who would sometimes pick up the garbage as he walked down the hall. And he cared about the environment in which he and the rest of the employees worked. And I recently was talking with a college president, Mike Carter from Campbellsville University, and his staff was teasing him while I was in the room about the fact that the man will take care of everything if he had the time. You walk into his office, he offers you something to drink, and he goes and gets it himself. If there is a crisis for one of the members of the staff, he makes certain that they may not have all the resources that they may need, but he reaches out and says, what can we do? And tries to provide a solution. He works the problem. And those are the kinds of behaviors that those of us who hold positional leadership want to model to other people. But I also think it's kind of interesting, because if I go and pick up a piece of trash in the building one day, as an example, it kind of gives other people permission to do that too. It's like, oh, okay, well then I can do that as well. Or, replace the water in the water cooler, all those sort of little things. And yes, sometimes it means that you have to get up in the middle of the night and do the hard work because there's a crisis or something just absolutely has to be done at those hours. But other times, it's really important to think about how you are a transformational leader and to set forth a vision with those that are charged with developing the strategy for your organization and see its future and play the long game, or at least gauge in the long game. I'm not certain play is the term I want to use. So you have to think about the decisions you make today, how will they impact the organization tomorrow, a year from now, and let's say 10 years from now or 100 years from now. You have to be careful and to look out toward the future so that you're making the best decisions that you possibly can and ultimately continue to transform your organization to not only survive in this time, but to thrive in the future.
That's wonderful. And then Tara, we are getting close to the final time. Who is your favorite leader out of all the people in the world? Who inspires you the most?
In all honesty, I'm going to give not a household name, but there's a woman named Jo Spencer who I have tremendous respect for. And she walks the talk every day. She walks the walk and walks the talk every day. And my leadership is modeled on everything I've learned from her. And it's compassion. It is being rightfully angry when bad things happen to other good people in your organization. It's being protective of the organization, but also its people. It's being forthright and honest, but with kindness, delivering hard messages, but not with angry tones. It is giving your word, meeting your word, doing what you're going to say. And there are all sorts of people that are wonderful leaders in our society, but they're not always the people who are in positions of power. And I think those quiet leaders do so much to transform their communities, whether they're a breast cancer awareness group, whether they're a church group, whether they're a university in the Southeast. Those people have a tremendous impact often without realizing the influence they have on others.
That's beautiful. I appreciate you giving credit to her and recognizing a woman as strong as that. We as leaders, I think leadership, we can see you mentioned power a few times, and there are powerful leaders out there who have the stage and who have the platform. Just make sure if you do get there, and I have a good friend that I coach on this, and he's in a really strong position right now. I said, you've been elevated and you've done the right things along your journey to be elevated. So continuing to remember, if you have a belief in God, whatever that looks like, who got you there? And what is the greater purpose of you being placed in that leadership role, as opposed to our own ego and the wants, in a sense, of power? Because we see what happens to a lot of the people that are driven by ego. They may not be there forever and ever, or bad things happen, different scandals, different crises. So one of the things that I've really learned through my leadership journey is to look at other leaders who have a belief in something far greater than themselves, far greater than their ego, their political circle, and the internal strength and resolve of these people is just amazing. And whether that is at the community level as a community organizer, on social justice issues, gentrification in the urban core, that I see a lot of these people that are doing just great work, to elected officials who do incredible work with public policy, to school teachers in leadership roles, and dealing and navigating change. There's just so much change that is coming before us in our time on earth, that leadership is critical. And if you are just starting out in your career, be the best leader that you can. And when you get to that CEO position, if that's on your journey and that's on your path, just remember, the internal strength and doing the little things every single day while you still have the big job ahead of you. So Tara, thank you so much. And how can people learn more about you and about ODK?
You can find me on LinkedIn, and you can also find our organization at odk.org, which is Omicron Delta Kappa's website. And then we have a companion site called odkleadershipmatters.org, and it has a variety of leadership resources, including the videos from our major speakers at our last 3 national conventions. And we love the name of it because it's about matters of leadership, but it makes the point that leadership matters. So again, that's odkleadershipmatters.org. And I hope that individuals, if they have any questions or concerns, are always welcome to contact me at Tara, T-A-R-A, at odk.org.
Thank you so much, Tara. And my final question, probably the question that everybody has who's been nominated. Is there any way to find out who nominated you into ODK?
Those decisions are made at the circle level, and probably not in the case for you. There are some historical records going back in the early 1900s, but at the time of you were initiated, I would assume it was a faculty or staff member at the university who made that nomination of you, but we would not have those records at our national office. I'm sorry.
To Southern Oregon University, thank you so much for your nomination. It means the world to me still, and I hope to continue all the values of the Circle and ODK as a leader, and wish everyone the best in their leadership journey. You can tune in to the Drew Aversa Show with new guests at drewaversa.com. Thank you.